The first royally translated work granted by His Majesty the King to the Thai people was นายอินผู้ปิดทองหลังพระ a translation of the best-selling biography, A Man Called Intrepid. The book told of the largest secret operation during the Second World War, assuring victory through the most elaborate communication network. The translated work highlights the importance of telecommunication technology for the prosperity of the people and the security of their nation. It is not surprising that telecommunications was an interest of His Majesty since childhood. In 1895, the Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi started experimenting with long-distance communications using radio waves in Salvan, a tiny resort town in the Alps just southwest of Switzerland. Some 40 years later, in Switzerland's southwest, a young Siamese, His Royal Highness Prince Bhumibol, then residing as a commoner in Lausanne, assembled his own radio. He made it from the radio circuit of the cat's whisker detector he had won in a raffle at his school fair, together with other parts bought with his personal savings. His homemade radio receiver could pick up signals from several stations in Europe. Radio broadcasting was in its infancy, with the first stations coming on air only about 15 years before. The young prince was then about 10 years old. His Majesty's childhood interests extended to electricity. He once set up a toy electric train on the lawn of the house where his family lived, connecting it according to the principles of single-circuit direct current, with a single copper wire from the house and the earth serving as another conductor. While visiting Siam in 1938, accompanying his older brother King Anantamahidol, His Royal Highness Prince Bhumibol linked the radio set from his room to a loudspeaker he set up in his brother's bedchamber. Even after assuming the burden of head of state, His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej continued his interest in communications and telecommunication technologies. He promoted their use for the benefit of the people of the Kingdom of Thailand to aid national social and economic development efforts, especially in rural and remote areas, and to facilitate the mitigation of natural disasters. We shall reign with righteousness for the benefit and happiness of the Siamese people. These were the first words spoken by His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej after his coronation, the first communication from the king to his subjects. From that day on, through numerous royal activities, His Majesty has aimed to improve the quality of life and bring greater prosperity to all in the kingdom. His many royal addresses also aim to help improve the lives of his subjects. Through these addresses and other communications to the nation, King Bhumibol Adulyadej presents ideas and promotes philosophies of life that can be adopted by people to serve as guidelines for content and rewarding lives. Since 1969, His Majesty has personally punched out his own telex message as a New Year blessing for officials in the royal service. At the end of the message is the Who Are You code, กส9 ปลุก meaning to punch in. His Majesty's personal identification sign used to confirm sending and receiving of messages on the International Communication Network.
องค์ท่านได้ใช้เครื่องมือสื่อสารเป็นทุกชนิดนะฮะเป็นอย่างดีด้วยนะจนถือว่าเป็นผู้นำแห่งการสื่อสารของบ้านเราเลยเครื่องเทเล็กเนี่ยนะครับถือว่าในยุคนั้นเป็นเครื่องมือสื่อสารที่ทันสมัยที่สุดที่เราใช้ติดต่อในสายการบินเกิดเหตุปั๊บพอเข้ารายงานเป็นข้อมูลมามันก็จะออกเป็นใบยาวๆเป็นโค้ดออกมาแล้วเราโค้ดให้เข้าเครื่องอ่านมันก็ตีออกมาเป็นตัวพิมพ์ดีดตึกๆๆๆเราสามารถรายงานได้ทันที
Later, His Majesty switched from using a telex message to creating New Year's cards on a computer. He created Thai font and decorated the cards with various patterns, signing them at the end with his code กส9 ปรุง meaning to compose.
พระเจ้าอยู่หัวอาจจะเป็นพระมหากษัตริย์พระองค์แรกก็มั้งครับของโลกที่ทรงสนพระทัยและทรงใช้อินเทอร์เน็ตแล้วก็พอถึงปีใหม่จำได้ไหมครับจะมีบัตรสคสของพระเจ้าอยู่หัวแล้วก็แจกจ่ายมาทางอินเทอร์เน็ตให้คนได้รับได้เห็นได้อ่าน
Aside from royal blessings, the messages contained in the cards relate directly to events in the country, or reflect problems faced by the people, or give advice on how to overcome obstacles. In precise and well-chosen words, the messages give encouragement and help boost the morale of the people. These are messages used by His Majesty to communicate with the people of the country, to reaffirm his pledge, to reign with righteousness for the benefit and happiness of the Siamese people. Throughout his reign, one of the most familiar sights of His Majesty the King has been of him at work in the countryside, going to all corners of the countryside, always carrying 4 basic tools: a map, a pencil, a camera, and a two-way radio. กส9 is the call sign used by His Majesty when using the police radio network. Those in the network know well that His Majesty remembers all the call signs of the members and always uses the identification codes accurately when making radio communications. Although fully aware that Gosokao is the call sign of His Majesty, those in the network have been allowed by His Majesty not to use the Thai words used for royalty with this specific call sign.
เมื่อก่อนก็คงตื่นเต้นเหมือนกันเจ้าฟ้าจากแผ่นดินโทรมาสมัยก่อนพอโทรมาปั๊บท่านก็นั่งพับพวกนี้ก็นั่งพับเพียบพูดวิทยุแทนแต่ตอนหลังก็เคยชินเราก็ทำหน้าที่ตามปกติก็ถือว่าพระองค์ท่านก็คือกส9ก็คือสมาชิกในองค์กรเดียวกัน
มีอยู่ครั้งหนึ่งซึ่งพระองค์ท่านเรียกมาโดยตรงเรียกถุงสุวรรณมาโดยพระองค์ท่านเรียกว่าปทุมวันจากกส9ว2เปลี่ยนนะครับซึ่งตอนนั้นลูกเวรผมซึ่งเป็นพนักงานวิทยุอยู่ก็ตื่นเต้นและตกใจไม่กล้าตอบครับคือรู้ว่ากส9เนี่ยเป็นพระนามของพระองค์ท่านนะผมก็เลยเข้าไปตอบตอบด้วยความที่ว่าไม่รู้จะพูดไงนึกไม่ออกก็เลยตอบพระองค์ท่านไปตรงๆว่าปทุมวันว2กส9พะยาค่ะพระองค์ท่านก็เลยตรงตัดมาว่าไม่ต้องพูดราชาศัพท์ให้พูดภาษาวให้พูดธรรมดา
His Majesty the King started to study radio communications seriously since 1968. Gaining in-depth knowledge of the technology, he supervised the development of antenna and repeater systems to facilitate work of the Border Patrol Police. His Majesty supported work of the Volunteer Doctors Foundation under the patronage of Her Royal Highness the Princess Mother by suggesting a signal relay system to help the communication network of the mobile medical units in remote areas of the country. When natural disasters struck, His Majesty provided recommendations for use of radio communications to coordinate help in inaccessible areas. These were adopted with most effective results by military and police personnel, as well as voluntary radio operators. To support drought relief efforts, His Majesty provided guidelines for use of radio to coordinate work of royal rainmaking units. Better communications between the planes and ground units improved efficiency of the operations.
ท่านมีคืออิทธิบาทสี่คือท่านมีฉันทะมีความพอใจที่จะทำงานเรียนรู้หาความรู้ทะลุปลุกโปร่งถ้าจะมีโครงการอะไรสักอย่างท่านหาความรู้ในหลักการในวิชาการท่านเรียกผู้รู้เข้าไปสอบถามก่อน
เมื่อมีฉันทะคือความพอใจความรักในสิ่งที่ทรงทำอยู่ทรงมีวิริยะด้วยคือความภาคเพียรที่จะทำให้สำเร็จแล้วก็ที่แน่นอนที่สุดต้องมีจิตตะด้วยคือความจดจ่อไม่ฟุ้งซ่านแล้วก็มีวิมังสาข้อสุดท้ายคือการทบทวนไตร่ตรองสิ่งที่ทำไปแล้วทรงสอนเสมอว่าจะทำอะไรให้สำเร็จต้องมีอิทธิบาท
Based on his personal interest and ability, combined with a quest for knowledge and experimenting on his own to see the actual results, His Majesty has helped develop radio communications in the country. His work has helped form a body of knowledge of radio communications technologies and systems developed in the country, reducing dependence on technologies from abroad. These tools have aided in the communications necessary to help further the development of society, the nation's economy, and the quality of people's lives. 40 years ago, radio transmitters and receivers were very costly, and their purchase used a large portion of the country's budget. They were necessary, though, to help maintain national security maintenance and promote national development. It was His Majesty's conviction that communications technologies could be developed by Thais themselves. With his keen interest in the function of antennas and the distribution of radio signals, His Majesty conducted preliminary research and experiments before having scientists and the armed forces carry out further research and development. 1970. Assistant Professor Dr. Suthi Aksonkit designed and built the first antenna in response to His Majesty the King's initiative. The antenna for two-way radio communication in the VHF range incorporated 23 technical specifications given by His Majesty, and which had never been included in production specifications for antennas. The antennas needed to assist with long-distance transmission and reception, seek direction while communicating, be able to connect to several radio receivers simultaneously, and lose the least power of transmission while sending signals. His Majesty the King named the antenna in honor of its creator as Suthi 1.
ผมก็ลองไปนั่งคำนวณดูซิว่ามีปัจจัยอะไรบ้างที่จะทำให้การสื่อสารได้องค์ประกอบหลักของมันเนี่ยที่สำคัญนะครับมีอยู่2ตัวคือกำลังส่งของเครื่องส่งและอัตราขยายหรือค่าทวีกำลังของสายอากาศถ้าเพิ่มทางหนึ่งแล้วนะฮะจะเพิ่มอีกทางหนึ่งหรือไม่ก็ได้นะครับมันได้ผลเท่ากันแต่ก็พบว่าการเพิ่มในทางเทคนิคนะครับเราไปเพิ่มกำลังส่งของเครื่องส่งเนี่ยจะทำให้ยุ่งยากลำบากมากกว่าเพิ่มค่าทวีกำลังของสายอากาศการที่ท่านไปเน้นให้เพิ่มที่สายอากาศเนี่ยแท้ที่จริงแล้วมีข้อดีอยู่จำนวนมากก็เลยถึงได้ตระหนักว่าพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวในท่านคงทรงทราบนะครับจะโดยวิธีใดว่าสายอากาศนั้นก็มีบทบาทสำคัญนะครับในการที่จะเพิ่มสัญญาณมันขึ้นมานะครับ
After then, His Majesty used the Suthi 1 antenna to help mitigate various natural disasters and also to help resolve the political crisis in 1973. His Majesty the King put it to trial use and gave suggestions for further development of the technology, leading to the Suthi 2, Suthi 3, and Suthi 4 antenna, all with different distinctive features, including the royal sausage antenna, developed from a common coaxial cable, which could transmit signals very far, especially in remote areas with rugged terrain, such as the bases of the Border Patrol Police.
ท่านพระราชทานแบบให้ผมความจริงในนามของการไฟฟ้าฝ่ายผลิตคล้ายๆให้ลิขสิทธิ์ให้ไปทำได้ให้แบบพิมพ์เขียวมาเพื่อไปใช้ในราชการทั่วไปก็ทำให้เราแลกเปลี่ยนความรู้กันก็ทำให้กิจการสื่อสารเนี่ยก้าวหน้าไปได้
The antenna produced through royal initiatives have been developed for over 40 years. If calculated commercially, the project would be worth a tremendous amount. But His Majesty the King gave these antennae free of charge to government agencies and state enterprises, enabling them to save considerable budget that would have otherwise been needed to import antennas from abroad. This contributed to national development in several ways by helping with savings to the national budget, promoting the country's technological ability, and helping nations' social and economic development. After His Majesty the King would visit villages, the development works he initiated still kept being implemented, with radio and other communication systems as key tools to assure continuity. Those facing hardship could quickly gain assistance through the communication networks established according to His Majesty's recommendations. In his travels to remote areas, His Majesty often encountered gravely ill people, as well as Border Patrol police and other servicemen injured in their duties in remote areas. They needed to be taken to hospitals as quickly as possible. His Majesty used his radio to coordinate their evacuation for immediate treatment.
ท่านทรงสอนว่าอะไรเป็นอะไรเราก็พัฒนาจนกระทั่งเราสามารถติดต่อไปไกลมากครับไปไกลมากแม้กระทั่งพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวประทับหัวหินเลยท่านก็รับฟังเมื่อมีใครติดต่อกันไม่ได้พระองค์ท่านจะมอนิเตอร์คอยฟังข่ายมงกุฎแล้วก็ใครเป็นยังไงติดต่อไม่ได้ท่านก็จะเป็นตัวกลางประสานให้พวกเราก็สะดวกมากเมื่อท่านได้เข้ามาแล้วต่อหลังท่านเห็นว่าความจำเป็นของรถพยาบาลเนี่ยควรจะมีคลื่นพิเศษท่านก็พระราชทานคลื่นส่วนพระองค์มาใช้เฉพาะรถพยาบาลอีก1คลื่น
His Majesty also gave advice to the Princess Mother's Medical Volunteers Foundation on the use of the repeater system linked through the long-distance communication network of the Telephone Organization of Thailand. The foundation launched radio consultations between doctors and hospitals with patients in remote areas. These volunteer doctors were known as flying doctors and later as radio doctors.
ทีนี้ก็มีบางทีคนเจ็บคนไข้เนี่ยมันกว่าจะเดินทางมาถึงกว่าหมอจะไปอีกทีคนไข้ตายทำยังไงถึงจะรับปรึกษาความไข้ของคนเหล่านั้นได้แล้วก็มีคนที่ค่อนข้างจะพูดภาษาหมอก็รู้เรื่องอยู่นะฮะเราก็จัดคนพวกนั้นรับคนไข้ก็มีการอบรมสอนว่าให้ซักถามคนไข้อาการเป็นยังไงปวดท้องอะไรตามภาษาหมอกันนะฮะพอเราตามนี้ได้แล้วเขาก็รายงานเข้ามาทางนี้ก็วินิจฉัยจากอาการไข้ว่ามันน่าจะเป็นยังไงก็เป็นการรักษาคนไข้ทางวิทยุขึ้นต้นที่เขื่อนภูมิพลลองดูแล้วก็เป็นหลายจุดด้วยกัน
Communication and coordination among units are key factors for effective development. His Majesty's initiative to enhance the efficiency of long-distance communication based on information from the Provincial Electricity Authority was able to improve the work of police communications. Establishment of a repeater system using powerful transmitters combined with the royally granted Suti-2 antennas helped the police build a communications network to cover all the country at low cost. Royal rainmaking operations to help ease drought in agricultural areas often need to adjust to sudden changes in weather patterns. Better communication between pilots and ground staff can help make the work more effective. A communication radio network was set up in response to His Majesty's wishes, allowing those on the ground and in the air to exchange crucial information quickly and make immediate adjustments to aid their work. The Royal initiated projects use technologies that are appropriate for the environment where the people live and appropriate for their needs and social and economic conditions. Yet all the development work cannot be fully realized without efficient communication. His Majesty the King has helped to lay a firm foundation for the nation's communication systems, which are used to help improve the health and welfare of the people. After a devastating storm that ravaged Suanpung district in Ratchaburi province in 1986, a number of volunteer radio operators set up an ad hoc communication radio network linked with the Siloam Network Command Center to send updated reports on the situation to agencies and groups involved in the relief efforts. Throughout the period when the network was being set up, a user with the call sign VR009 or VR009 called in to the Network Command Center with the advice on managing the ad hoc network. VR009 is the call sign of His Majesty the King. When the Post and Telegraph Department set up the VR Voluntary Radio Club in 1981, they presented the call sign VR009 to His Majesty.
หน้าที่สำคัญของนักยุทธศาสตร์สมัครหรือ VR นี้คือการช่วยเหลือสังคมในรูปแบบต่างๆน้ำท่วมไฟไหม้จราจรติดตันส่วนในหน้าที่รองคือการทดลองค้นคว้าในกิจการวิทยุคมนาคมต่างๆ
When Typhoon Gay made landfall in Chumphon province in late 1989, the storm destroyed high-voltage power lines and radio antennas in the area. And when the tsunami struck the Andaman coast at the end of 2004, all telecommunication networks and telephone systems were cut off. Prompt assistance after both disasters was made possible with the cooperation of the volunteer radio operators.
ในปี 2532 เราก็ไปช่วยพายุเกในตอนนั้นผมยังจำได้เพราะผมก็นำทีมลงไปแต่หลังจากนั้นเมื่อปี 2547 วันที่ 26 ธันวาที่เกิดสึนามิขึ้นมานะครับพวกเราก็คิดว่านักวิทย์สมัครเล่นคงไม่ได้มีบทบาทเข้าไปช่วยอะไรหรอกมั้งครับเพราะว่าทางราชการก็เตรียมตั้งเครื่องไม้เครื่องมือตั้งซื้อเครื่องมือที่ดีๆมาไว้แล้วแต่มันก็เกิดเหมือนเดิมฮะระบบสื่อสารก็ล่มหมดสาธารณะทั้งหมดที่มีอยู่นะครับ
During a severe flood in North Thailand in May 2006, His Majesty assigned the armed forces to solve the problem of the failure of the normal communication network by bringing communication radios into the flood-hit areas and setting mobile radio stations as base stations to help coordinate the work of those helping the relief efforts, whether by foot or by helicopter. Whenever a natural disaster strikes, the communication radio is the most effective tool to help with relief operations and damage control.
หลายครั้งที่ผมเข้าเวรในเวลากลางคืนเวลาดึกก็จะมีวิทยุวอจากพระองค์ท่านเนี่ยมาสอบถามในเรื่องของสภาพปัญหาต่างๆของบ้านเมืองพระองค์จะสนใจมากที่สุดก็คือเรื่องของทุกข์สุขของประชาชนเช่นว่าถึงเวลาหน้าฝนพายุพัดน้ำท่วมที่ไหนเกิดวาตภัยที่ไหนอุทกภัยอัคคีภัยอะไรต่างๆเหล่านี้พอเกิดสิ่งต่างๆเหล่านี้ในทุกมุมของประเทศเนี่ยเรารู้เลยว่าในคืนวันนี้พระองค์ท่านจะต้องสอบถามข้อมูลว่าข้อมูลจากพื้นที่ส่งขึ้นมานั้นเป็นอย่างไรบ้าง
Although communication technologies have advanced considerably over the years, the communication radio systems and networks that His Majesty the King helped lay the foundation for and developed more than 40 years ago remains an important means of communication for the country, relieving the hardship of the people, and, as His Majesty said at his coronation, for the happiness and benefit of the Siamese people. Hotel Sierra 1 Alpha Sierra is the code name for a radio station unlike any other in the world. It is the Ossaw radio station at Dusit Palace, broadcasting from the royal residence to the broader listening audience. Ossaw radio station was started after His Majesty the King returned to Thailand in 1951. The Public Relations Department presented and installed a 100-watt radio transmitter, broadcasting simultaneously on AM and shortwave, able to be heard in Thailand and to Europe and America from 1952. The name Ossaw is an acronym for Ampornsathan Mansion, where the first broadcast was made. In its early days, His Majesty the King personally tuned the transmitter, produced the programs, and put the records on air. He also had experts in various fields as speakers in the programs. His Majesty formed the Ossaw Friday Band to perform jazz live on air every Friday. Listeners would sometimes call to request their favorite tunes from the band. This helped bring the king much closer to his people. It helps strengthen those ties between the people and their king even more when Ossaw Radio relayed His Majesty's comments and speeches during visits throughout the country, as well as the sermons he gave when he was ordained as a monk in 1956. Ossaw Radio Station also served as the information center to rally assistance whenever and wherever disasters struck in the country. Ossaw Radio Station has developed over time, with the transmission power increased, bringing entertainment and topics of interest from the Chilada Royal Villa to listeners of all ages, from His Majesty's first broadcast to this day. The 25th of October, 1962, in the early evening, Tropical Storm Harriet, which had formed in the Gulf of Thailand, made landfall at Nakhon Si Thammarat province, devastating a vast area, claiming thousands of lives, and leaving innumerable homeless. As soon as the report of the disaster reached His Majesty, Ossaw Radio Dusit Palace immediately launched an appeal for public donations of cash and in kind to help the disaster victims. His Majesty accepted the donations himself. In just 1 month, cash donations topped 11 million baht, and donations of food and supplies were valued at about 5 million baht. This was when a bowl of noodles cost less than 1 baht. Such was the listener's attachment and confidence in Osar Radio. This was one of the first times that people joined a royal charitable project, a practice they continued to the present day. Osar Radio Station not only provides entertainment and informative programs, but also serves to inform the people of important and urgent incidents, such as natural disasters or epidemic outbreaks. This was crucial in the years before the widespread and instant news media available today. That incident, showing the Thai people's kindness and compassion towards their compatriots through the Osar radio station, led His Majesty to set up the Rajaprachanukha Foundation in the following year. Knowing that natural disasters could happen at any time, His Majesty established the foundation as a relief organization ready to operate immediately. The royal granted name Rajaprachanukha means the king and the people mutually helping each other. Despite the proliferation of various types of mass media, Osar Radio, as a part of the National Broadcasting Service of Thailand, has remained an important link between the king and his people. It remains the only radio station in Thailand allowed to broadcast on short wave, heard around the world. From the first broadcast, His Majesty has borne the cost of the station's operations from his personal funds. The station operates under his policy of economizing to gain maximum benefits from the funds. A principle central to his theory of sufficiency economy, intended to help Thais attain peaceful, sufficient, and secure lives. Each year on the day prior to His Majesty the King's birthday anniversary of the 5th of December, a familiar scene on Thai television is His Majesty the King delivering a speech to well-wishers who are granted an audience. This royal audience is televised from Dusidalai Hall, Chitladda Royal Villa, to the Thai people throughout the nation. On New Year's Eve, the Thai people are granted blessings and words of advice from their king. These are the special occasions that all Thai people look forward to. For over 50 years, television has played a significant role in Thailand. Thai people get news, information, and entertainment through television. Communication with pictures and sound to every household has become a powerful media as it reaches people from all walks of life quickly and thoroughly. His Majesty the King regularly communicates with the people through television, with court news regularly presenting royal activities. When His Majesty frequently visited people in remote areas, he brought the reality of their problems and conditions to the eyes of urban residents and the more well-to-do in the country. Through his televised visits to the countryside, his audiences with officials working on development issues, and his addresses to the people, His Majesty transferred technical know-how and methods to help solve the country's problems to all his subjects. Even when the country has faced grave political crisis and division, His Majesty the King has appeared on the national television pool to address those involved in the conflict, reminding them to be aware of the great danger faced by the nation.
Wen คนมีการปฏิบัติรุนแรงมันลืมตัวลงท้ายก็ไม่รู้ว่าตีกันเพราะอะไรแล้วก็จะแก้ปัญหาอะไรเพียงแต่ว่าจะต้องเอาชนะแล้วก็ใครจะชนะไม่มีใครอันตรายทั้งนั้นมีแต่แพ้คือต่างคนต่างแพ้ผู้ที่เผชิญหน้าก็แพ้แล้วก็ที่แพ้ที่สุดก็คือประเทศชาติประชาชนจะเป็นประชาชนทั้งประเทศ
This royal address that was broadcast to all the people who had become so discouraged with the turmoil in the country helped them resolve the problems once again, restoring peace. Thaikom, Thailand's first communications satellite, considered a turning point for communications and telecommunication of the country. Its borderless communication network has helped drive the economy ahead at a fast pace. Yet for many years, Thailand has faced a shortage of teachers, especially in poorer rural and urban communities, as well as schools in remote border areas. How can the country progress quickly, or even for whom, if future generations still lack opportunities to obtain quality education? His Majesty the King initiated the use of the Thaikom satellite for education with the Distance Learning Foundation, producing and making live satellite broadcasts from Glaikangwon Palace School in Hua Hin, based on the elementary, secondary, and vocational curricula. To aid the learning, a knowledge-based program was initiated under the royally granted name of Siksa Tat. On several occasions, students through satellite had the chance to learn directly from His Majesty when he personally instructed in this program. When the rise of worldwide communication through the Internet, the Telecommunication Association of Thailand has developed distance learning through the Internet. With public-private sector cooperation, the e-learning system was created in 2002 to extend educational opportunities to computer-using learners, both in and outside the country. They are able to learn through the website and web radio of the Distance Learning Foundation, both as live broadcasts and on-demand programs. Distance communication through satellite at His Majesty's initiative has helped solve the problem of teacher shortages and created greater equality in education. Communication technology has been applied to human resource development, the most important element in the economic and social development of the country. Critical if there is to be true and sustainable economic, social, and national security.